Hi, everyone. Welcome to A New View. I'm Lee, and I'm here with Kim, Juji, and Shira. We are four friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. Today, we have a very special guest with us. She has been making a profound impact on people's lives by helping them discover their true being. As a world-renowned facilitator of personal growth workshops, relationship seminars, and goddess retreat trainings, Sylvia Badachi has been fiercely holding her students accountable for their lives. Her enormous love and compassion for the human condition makes her a much beloved teacher on 4 continents. I personally have known Sylvia for over 10 years since meeting her at a transformational workshop that has had a profound effect on my own life. I'm honored to introduce the one and only Sylvia Badachi. Sylvia, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. We're so excited to have you with us today. And before we dive in, we'd like to start off with a question that we ask all of our guests. Are you ready? What is the best compliment you have ever received?
Such a good question to ask everyone. You know, in the work that I do, it's about emotional intelligence. And so it's experiential learning, and people really take a deep dive experientially into themselves and reclaim really their own essence, the soul of who they are. So what I love more than anything else is this compliment. When someone stands at the front of the room, radiant and light, wide open, and says, I created this for myself and my life. And what they're saying is, the training was the vehicle that opened the door, but I did this, meaning that now I can walk into my world knowing that I have a choice about how I choose to interpret any moment, and I can choose to interpret through love or fear. And in that, there's incredible courage. So the real compliment is they get that they do their own work, and I get to be a part of that beautiful space.
Oh, I have chills.
Me too. So beautiful and humble.
And so humble. I was just thinking the same thing, but that's Sylvia. That's like her middle name, humble. All right. Well, Sylvia, so I have the first question to start you off with today, if you will. How did you get started on this journey of helping others to live their best lives?
Okay, so the work I do, as I said, is transformational trainings. And the short answer is my sister did it and enrolled me, and it went up from there. But I never wanted to give a short answer. So the long answer is, I grew up in California on a farm, a ranch. And my dad, I'm one of 7 children, all born really close together. So my dad was this extraordinary, extraordinary man. He was warm and loving, and he adored his family. So we ate dinner together every single night, and he was great at this. He would listen to our chit chat about school and 4-H and track or whatever we were doing, and weave a little thread, and then he'd teach a lesson about life. And one lesson he taught often was this. He would say, you know, in life, kids, you always leave a mark. You always leave a mark. So you need to know at the end of any day, after you say your prayers and crawl in bed, you want to be proud of the mark that you left that day, the mark that you left on others. And then he'd pause and say, so what kind of mark did you kids leave in the world today? And work his way around the table, and we all had to answer up. So, you know, some days you're proud, some not. Anyway, fast forward, went away to college. Then after college, like most people of my generation, went out to seek my fortune and doing okay and, you know, pulling life together. And then my dad dropped dead. And he was really young. He died of a heart attack. And it was devastating. And my sister did this training and enrolled me. Anyway, it was in the second level of the training. We're doing an exercise. The lights are dim, in fact, very dark. And you're calling out, you're talking to your mom and dad to clear some things in the past. And as I called out to my dad, it's going to sound weird, and it was not in my Catholic upbringing, but my dad materialized right in front of me, kind of like in Star Trek, and looked just exactly as I always knew him, in his Levi's, his cowboy boots. And he called out my nickname, which is Sylvester. He called out Sylvester, and I looked up, and my heart just flooded with love. And for some reason, I put my head down, and he called again, Sylvester. And then he said, Sylvester, what kind of mark are you leaving in the world now? And that question changed my life. And then he dematerialized, which was hard because I just wanted to hold him, but that was his message. So after I finished that training, it's a kind of a 3-month deal. I was hired the very next day, and I have been doing transformational work ever since.
Wow.
You just drop the mic right now. I'm like, I'm done.
How lucky are you to have had a dad like that?
Yes. Yes. To even think about what you're going to contribute to this world and not think so much about yourself at such a young age, and to be instilled with these values.
Sylvia,
Yeah.
can I ask you a quick question? I'm so sorry. You're saying you're one of 7 children. I'm just so fascinated by that, and just the way you described your evening dinners. And were I can't imagine every single one of your other siblings, but were they all sort of impacted by that? Like, did
Absolutely.
they all have similar kinds of reactions to that notion every night?
All of my siblings, we were all born within 10 years. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah. Every Easter picture, my mother's pregnant in the same dress. And the answer is yes. All of my siblings are just extraordinary human beings, and all are contributors in every way. And it's amazing. The next generation is as well. Their children are as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wow. Sylvia, did your relationships with your siblings, like your whole family, did that contribute to you doing relationship work later with families?
My relationships with my family has always, my sisters are incredible, and my adorable, fabulous. But that isn't what led me to that. I ended up doing relationship workshops because how many of you have ever been married? Raise your hand. I always ask my student, I ask the relationships workshop this question. Everybody raises their hand, you know. And I go, how many of you no, and when you got married, did you make a sacred vow, you know, till death do us part? And we all go. And then I'll say, and then how many of you are divorced? And then I go. So it's when I got divorced that then I asked this question. And how many of you, when you got divorced, you were pretty sure it was the other person's fault? So, you know, I wanted to blame somebody and, you know, be a victim anyway. But what I teach responsibility, and choice for a living. So I couldn't blame anyone. I couldn't be a victim. So that led me to research. And that's what actually created the relationship workshop.
So your divorce played a huge role in that?
Yes. Yeah. You know, the work itself, though, when I started this work, it was only available in the United States. And that's been another beautiful part of my journey. Because I started it so long ago, once we were going across the United States, expanding, etc., well, Gorbachev stepped up in the USSR. That broke into Russia, and within months, we were doing trainings in Russia. I know. Then, I know, it was just remarkable what happened. Then, I don't know if you know who Pinochet is of Chile. He was a dictator in Chile. When he was deposed, we ended up doing trainings in Chile. And these are people that have been through war-torn hell for a long time. It was extraordinary. And then Mexico, the kind of the middle class was rising a bit, and we ended up doing tons of trainings in Mexico. Oh, I know. In 1997, before 1997, Hong Kong was about to prepare to go back to China because they'd been a British colony for a long time. So we started doing trainings in Hong Kong and then all over Asia. So this work has actually taken me around the globe, not around the globe, but to a lot of places. Yeah.
Well, this is sort of an unexpected question because I didn't realize how global this work was, but what difference do you see between, how, you're American, you were born and raised in the United States, like what is the difference between our attitude towards relationship and marriage versus anywhere else in the world, or is it pretty much the same everywhere?
That's a great question, because one of the things that's absolutely universal, global, is that we all want love. We all want to know that who I am is lovable and that the love that I am giving is received deeply. And I can experience that it's been received by someone else. We want to know that we belong in someone's heart, warts and all, flaws and all, and that we're home in someone's heart and that someone's got my back. That is absolutely global. Are the distinctions different around the globe? Yes, but these things are fundamental to all human beings. I can answer that in a bigger way. Is that okay? Okay. I know that you know about this attachment theory because it's pretty common, but it was originated in the 1930s by a man in London, and his name was Dr. John Bowlby. And what he did the research with children where the children go into the room and mama says, I'll be back in a few minutes. And there's all these toys and there's a two-way mirror. And some children can play, and when mom comes back, some children run, hug mom, they're secure, and then they go play again. Other children, when mom comes back, they cling to her like, where were you? They're insecure. And so in insecure, there's two categories. And one category is anxious. So those are the ones that cling to mama, don't leave me, don't leave me. Okay, and then the other one, when mom comes back, they kind of like, yeah, we're view band and ignore her. And those are called avoidant. So it's interesting. We had always believed, and so I do research in my work all the time because I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think human development is just incredible. Anyway, it was always considered that was only referring to children. And then in the last, say, 15 years or so, there's been a ton of research that attachment theory is actually for all human beings, regardless of age, and that we all need to be securely attached. And usually we didn't learn that when we were growing up. So what I usually tell my people in the training, this is what I say to half the training. Look, of all the people that you're going to meet, there's only two men that I know of that were securely attached. Jesus and Buddha, they're both dead. So you have to know that you're probably going to find someone who might be insecure. And we need to work together to build that secure attachment. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so now this longing for connection, for love, to know that we're attached, it is, Sue Johnson has done a lot of work on this. She's fabulous. And she says it is wired into our DNA and as critical to us as air and water. And I actually think that's true, that we need to know that someone's there for us and someone's got our back. Now, if we're insecure, if we're anxious in relationship or just anxious, when we're, well, what should I say? When life's going well, we're fine. It's when we're triggered, that's when stuff comes up. So when we're triggered, anxious usually leans in and clings, let's work this out, let's talk about this, etc. Avoidant is, I'm out of here, I'm going for a walk, or, I need some space. And usually they're attracted to each other.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Shira, you have
Yeah, so Sylvia, I have a question for you. Obviously, you've been doing this work for a very long time, and the internet and social media and all of those wonderful things have only been around for a few years. So I'm just wondering, because obviously you just used the word anxiety, and I know that that is a huge anxiety provoker in many people. How have you seen those elements change dynamics or change relationship issues, or good and bad, over the course of the last, maybe 10 to 20 years?
Could you clarify the question a little bit more? Are you talking about how people damage each other on social media, or are you talking about how we disconnect because of social media?
Right. Well, it's more, it's, I guess, a broader question, but how has social media, in your eyes and the work that you're doing, how has that either impacted relationships in a positive or negative way?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'll say a couple of things. In one way, the very fact that we have access to information has been a boon, because you can go online and find information about everything, which is wonderful and rich. But on the other hand, I'll say, particularly, we do a teen training. I think teens are seriously challenged and in many ways damaged by that addiction to social media, and that what they get, in our brains, they get a dopamine hit for likes, and they get depressed for dislikes. So I think that's been a real challenge for young people, and I think adults as well. In my work itself, though, I really focus on that human connection. And during COVID, social media has actually been a boon for people to keep some people together in the only way they could. But in the training, I do a lot of work about putting electronics down and showing up in communion with another person's energy field. And I think, even human touch is so important. If any of you have ever had a baby, the moment that baby's born, they lay that precious little bundle of life onto your naked chest, and you bond skin to skin. And I think that skin to skin bond is something that we all need to the day that we die. And I think those are things that do get in the way. So it's more of a narrow answer than I think you asked for.
Yeah, I guess the only quick follow-up is, do you offer advice or suggestions for people to be able, because it's so hard, like old habits die hard, especially with teens, like you're saying, that is the only world they know. So to say, put your device down, like I'm sure they could do that for however long your workshop is, but then they go right back to it when they leave the room. So, one can only hope that someone can just get a little bit of a different perspective, because that human to human, skin to skin, mind to mind, that is lost. It's a lost art form, I think, over time. But, I'm imagining that you have something to say to them about what they can do about it.
Do you want me to tell you what I tell them?
Yeah.
Okay. I tell stories. So I'll tell you a couple stories. One is, I had a student, it was a relationship workshop, and it was a couple. And a couple, they'd been together a long time, but they were not getting along. And it kind of looked like the husband dragged her there because she was out of this relationship. She was checked out, and I could tell for her, it was over. And so she wasn't participating much, but he was hungry and hanging in there like, this is our last, we got to make this work. And, I love her and I can't believe, anyway, so he stands up and shares. He said, and his heart was broken. He said, in my relationship, my wife is there, but when anything big happens in her life, she doesn't turn to me. She calls her sister. And it breaks my heart. I'm her husband. Why wouldn't she turn to me? So please stand up. Why don't you turn to him? And she looked right at him and said, because whenever I have turned to you, you'll listen for about a minute, and then you either check your phone or check one of your devices and then turn back. And I know that I'm second fiddle. You don't listen. And everybody in that room, you could feel the whole energy like, I've done that. Yeah. So we do that day. It's a really powerful day. They have a big homework assignment that night. The next morning they came back and she stands sobbing. And she said, last night, after all the work that we've done, we did the homework, and then something happened. I got triggered. And Jim, or whatever his name was, said, what's wrong? And she said, I remembered what I had said in here. And this time I'm going to trust again and turn towards him and tell him what's going on for me. And as she started to tell him, eye to eye, nose to nose, heart to heart, this is what I'm feeling. He listened and looked down and checked his phone. And then she stood and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And he stood and sobbed. And the whole room sobbed with them for all the times we couldn't give someone that moment. And instead, we were distracted by one of our devices. So it was a chilling moment. But I promise you, everyone in that training, the rest of their life will remember this moment matters. And who's ever buzzing me on that phone doesn't right now. So.
I'm so grateful that you shared that, because my husband and I feel we have a very healthy, loving relationship. We totally have moments like that where he's saying to me, you're not present, Kim, you're not being present. Or I'll say it to him because of the phone. And it's like, it's not worth it. And, you know, we stop and I'm present, I'm here, you know, but I don't want him to say that consistently. That's not healthy. You know, that's not good. Sylvia, I would love to know if there's like one common struggle that you see that's just very common among couples, like what they really, you know, just one really specific challenge that you find overall people deal with the most. Is there one thing or a few things? And I'm asking from a point of view of, I'm married 5 years and we've been together 8. And I find myself, when I meet couples who have been together for like 20 or 30 years, I always ask, oh, what's the key? Like, what's the key to a long lasting relationship like that, you know? And I feel it's communication and vulnerability. And I feel very blessed that my husband and I have that. And we work really hard towards that, to have that, you know? And I rarely hear that from couples who have been together for that long. You know, they'll say something different, you know, well, you got to compromise, or, you know, if you fight, you got to know that fighting's just, you know, it's just a part of marriage. Like, it just, I don't know. I don't really hear communication a lot. So I was just curious what you find in your experience.
You know, you are brilliant. You are right. You are onto something that's really, really critical about vulnerability. Because again, that question in relationships, are you there for me? Can I turn to you when my heart is broken or I'm scared? What I talk about in the training, and Stan Tatkin is really good about this, in a relationship, there's me here, my partner here, but the relationship is this third entity, and that we're both committed to it, and it's primary. So a relationship doesn't work if it's working for me, but not my partner. This sacred cup is what I call it in the training. This sacred cup becomes primary. And if I do anything that harms the sacred cup, meaning that my partner has had to shut down or pull back or is wounded, my number one priority in that moment is to mend what I've done. Stop, say, I'm sorry, I did that again, didn't I? And I apologize, I'm sorry. And make a correction right then. Because the sacred cup is knowing this one's in my corner no matter what. If I'm an extrovert and I love going to parties And my partner is an introvert. They'd rather stick needles in their eyes. If they agree to go to the party with me, I'm aware of them. I'm present for where they are, check in, make sure they're doing okay. And here's the thing, that question, can I turn to you? I think is really the critical question. So it's emotional intelligence, but what I call it is intelligent love. That I'm present for my partner, I'm available when I'm there with them. And when we're triggered and I see black and they see white, we can sit down together and work out what's underneath whatever triggered me, and know that I can trust them to keep their guard down and both stand in our vulnerability and work through it with grace. Can I answer it in a bigger way?
Please.
Okay. One of the things that's this is again Stan Tatkin. One of the things that's really big is how we leave each other. It's the beginning of a day, and how we come back together at the end of the day. That we leave in grace. And here's the thing: when this is working, how many of you know this? When this relationship is working, my whole life is working. Isn't that? Haven't you found that? And knowing that I can go out in my career and I can be a rock star. I can shoot for the moon. And if I fail or screw up or something doesn't work, I come home to this and I'm loved and I'm filled with love. And they're like, yeah, I know you gave it your all. So we fill each other up every night so that we can soar. And what I know is people in that kind of relationship, they're happy. They live longer, they're healthier longer. They are the biggest contributors, social contributors in the planet. They build healthy families. They create community wherever they walk. So I think emotional intelligence and that tenderness, that vulnerability, and knowing that we have this and that this has become sacred. Yeah.
And it's so clear when you don't have that sacred cup with that person, because I've been in plenty of relationships where I didn't feel that way. And it just felt like exactly what you explained. When you do have that, it's like everything just feels better, looks better, is more exciting, all of that. But when you don't have that and you are in a relationship, you feel it everywhere. Nothing is as good, kind of, you know?
You know, what they know, this is so interesting. Like in the last 15 years, this is a science now. So meaning that they can do all these tests. They put probes on people's heads and test them. So here was one of the examples. This is from Sue Johnson. A couple comes in and they're a couple that's in trouble. They're not going to make it. So the woman, this is a terrible experiment, but they put a thing on her foot and they let her know when there's a red dot on the screen, you're going to get a pretty big electrical shock on your left foot. And so she's like nervous, I know. And the shock does hurt. So they got all these probes. So the new therapist that she's never worked with, first she sits alone. And every time the dot comes, her brain goes off in terror, like, just terror in the 4th of July. Okay. By herself, it goes off. With her new therapist, her brain goes off. With her husband, her partner that they're fighting, it goes off. After only a few weeks of learning how to be present for one another, they do the same test. By herself, it goes off. With I think by the therapist, it went down a little. Holding her partner's hand with her, it barely lit up her brain at all. We soothe and regulate one another's emotional body. And it's a learning journey. It's not automatic. We have to learn. This is so cute. Stan Tatkin says, I have to become the Kim whisperer. I have to become the Lee whisperer. And I know you better than you know yourself. So when I see you walk in, I can see your eyes are troubled. I stop for a moment and ask, what's going on in there? Isn't that beautiful? Yeah. I'm going to tell you another story. Sorry, this is so beautiful. And this is,
I love the stories.
We can listen all day.
He's a writer, and I can't think of it. He's a relationship psychologist. And he and his wife have been married 100 zillion years, and they've written books together. Anyway, so he was getting ready for bed, and he had one chapter left in the mystery novel he was reading. So all he wanted to do was get to bed, read the last chapter, and call it good. As he's getting ready, brushing his teeth, he looks at his wife's eyes, and he notices she's in trouble, and she hasn't said a word. So his mind says, you know what? Pretend you didn't see that and just go to bed, because that beautiful mystery novel has only one chapter left. And then his heart said, basically, who are you kidding? So she was brushing her hair. He takes the hairbrush out of her hand. He begins to brush her hair.
Oh.
He looks at her eyes in the mirror and says, what's going on, baby? There's something you need to tell me. I can tell.
Wow. Wow. Where is that man? I'm looking for him.
Juji, I think Juji's been patiently waiting to ask a question. Go ahead.
I mean, come on, that was all worth it.
Say 100%.
And I'm with you, Lee. Well, actually, I guess this is like two very different questions, because you're describing all of these like beautiful incidents and relationships, and like, Kim, you can talk about like how wonderful it is to be in a relationship like that. And for some women, it's really sort of difficult to imagine what that could be like. So the follow-up question I have, is I've done self-development work, sort of like what you're talking about. And there were a lot of couples there who were attempting to do the work for themselves so that they could save their marriage. And what I saw more than anything was that people actually became okay with splitting up as a result of this work. Like, without blame and shame, they could look at one another and say, like, actually, this isn't what I truly want. And I can, leave this relationship, this marriage, whatever it is, knowing in my heart that I want the best for you. I want the best for me. This isn't the best for the two of us. So what do you feel is like more successful in a sense when you're doing this work? Like, if people can find their way back to each other, or when they can finally admit to themselves, no, I actually think that I am better off in the unknown of what it could be like with somebody else.
What's your real question, my darling?
Well, I mean, I went to a self-development program and I tried. Sorry?
And that sucker didn't work.
Oh no, it worked so well. And in a lot of ways, women, they learn to stand up for what they really want in life. And what I really wanted was a partner who was in similar work with me, who wanted to dig deeper, who wanted to find more connection. And I realized that the partner I was with was not that person. And so as hard as it was, I was like, I don't know what it's like to have the type of partner that I want, but I have to believe that he's out there and it's not here, and I deserve better than this. Not because I'm blaming my partner, but because I realize that I need more. So, how does that get eased for people when they go to work with their partners who are supposedly there wanting the same thing?
Okay, so what I'll say is I get both. And so I've had trainings where people did end the relationship. In one case that I can recall, they ended the relationship in the room. And it was actually a beautiful thing. And I have had so many success stories. It's extraordinary, and globally. And what's interesting about that is the relationship is a work in progress. and it's an evolutionary journey. So if I am clear, I'm in this relationship with you. We're gonna do this, and I've done this work. One of the things that we do in this sacred cup is at a time when we're both in our wholeness, when we're both very present and authentic and real and vulnerable, we make agreements about what this means. So that when I'm triggered or when they're triggered, or I just go off, which, I can do, my partner can say, hey, wait a minute. What about this? Remember we talked about how we were going to be when these things came up. So we have a grounded way to approach. And that grounded way might mean that for someone like me, I need to take a step back and breathe a bit, because I'm not ready to talk just yet, because I don't want to say things that I can't pull out of the ethers later. So I would say they go both ways. But one of the things I tell people in the training, this is so great, is how you go about looking for the one that you want to be with. And that was a big thing. So you want to hear that one?
Oh yeah.
So this is actually from Keith Wett, who's a friend of my sister's in Santa Barbara. And he's, again, a psychologist. And his oldest son had been on a pretty hot date, I guess. And he came home, and the next day he just said at breakfast, "Dad, how do you know if they're the one?" And his dad, instead of being a real, fatherly figure, like, "Well, tell me about your date," he became a psychologist and goes, boom, boom, boom. So he said, number one, chemistry. If you don't have chemistry, you got nothing. You got to start with chemistry. And that's true. There's got to be that spark of attraction, wouldn't you say? Mm-hmm. And I also want to say, sometimes the chemistry doesn't happen at love at first sight. Sometimes the chemistry, one of the best relationships I know of, they had known each other for 3 years and were friends. And then the chemistry clicked in after all that time. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. And they have an incredible relationship. Okay. Second one. Is this person capable and committed to being responsible for their own being in every way? So for their body, for their emotional body, so spiritual or emotional intelligence, for their career, for their life. So is this a responsible, capable person? Number 3, I think, is when there's a conflict, is this person, again, capable and committed to being present and vulnerable to stay in the fire until it's resolved to the benefit of all concerned? Isn't that a beautiful one? So that we grow through our challenges. We grow through the times we're triggered, become the greatest moments that we learn. Okay, what's number 5? I think the next one, this is one I love. Is this person capable, whether or not you ever plan to have children, would they be a really good parent? Because in relationship, whether or not you have kids, there's going to be times when you're going to be parenting someone. You could parent your dog. You could parent one of your, a family member. You could parent your own parents later, parent one another at times as well. So would they be a good parent? And I think the last one was, he said, does this person have a vision for their life, a passion for their life, a calling, something that pulls them forward, that lights them up? Because the whole focus can't be the relationship. You want someone that's passionate about life and committed to something bigger than themselves. Don't you love that?
That's okay. all after the first date?
Yes. No, the first text.
I like that. I'm going to use that now on my dates. I'm going to have like an interview process. 5 questions for you. Oh gosh. But Sylvia, this brings me back to the time that I took your relationship workshop with my now ex-husband. And I remember at the time in my own mind, sorry, there's a siren in the background. It'll stop in a second. I believe that at that time, and this was about a dozen years ago, and we had a child already. I think Jack was 5 or 6. In my mind, there was no option of like dissolving the relationship. I think that I tried so hard with first having these other workshops that we did. That's where I met you. And then I did a relationship workshop with you, where even after that, I think that in my mind, I was still trying to figure out how to patch it up. But I learned so much within that workshop. I remember realizing that everything I was feeling was right. Everything that I was seeing that I was not getting based on what I needed, it just wasn't there. And I think I was in denial of all of that because I wanted everything to just sound and look and feel right, you know, and I just couldn't put the pieces of the puzzle together until, you know, later on, once I did put my foot down and we separated. But yeah, it's amazing stuff. And I wish I knew, you know, what I know now, including these 5 things. But this is all part of life. And yeah, it's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot. I sometimes think, you know, like, how did I not see that before? You know, or how did I not realize this before? And again, I'll go back to like how you were so lucky to have a father who asked you guys basically to think beyond how a child thinks, which I think is so huge, which is awesome. But yeah.
Well, and when you're older, all those things you listed before, Sylvia, are so amazing. And what I would look for someone today, if I were dating, I'm 45, but my 20s and even half my 30s, none of that was on my radar. None of it. I think I had to do the work. I think I had to go through all of those trials and tribulations and do my own inner work. And then I started to look for those things. But yeah.
Right.
Can I just say one other quick last thing? And that is that as you were saying all of those tenets, you were sort of listing them. It made me think also about, because I've been through a lot of, you know, I just left my marriage also, not just, but like a year and a half ago. And we have to ask ourselves those questions too.
In my
You know,
back.
like, will I be able to show up in a relationship in a healthy way? Like, to me, that's sort of like number one. And then when you're kind of in a decent place, then you can bring on. That's why I took the last year to heal. I just needed to heal big time.
Such an awesome point, Shira. Such an awesome point. For me, the biggest lesson was that it's my responsibility. It's all my responsibility. I don't blame my ex for my divorce. You know, there are things we don't necessarily agree about each other, but there is nothing that is not our responsibility in our life. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it's,
Totally.
this is,
Yeah.
It's
Blaming
also-
is so much easier.
It's extremely powerful. When I'm responsible, I'm powerful. When I'm responsible, I'm in the driver's seat, not in the passenger seat, which is such a great thing.
such a great thing. And I think that this is a great place to wrap up. We're going to drive forward and we're going to wrap this up for now, but we do have a part 2 coming up. We hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and be sure to let us know if you have any topic requests or questions by commenting below. We'll see you soon. Thank you for watching and stay safe, everyone. Bye-bye.